Peace and blessings, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. I am your host, Arisah Muhammad, and you have joined the Art of Living show. We got podcasts, we got the YouTube channel, we got all that jumping off. So I'm really excited about today's conversation that we're going to have today. I think it's going to be very informative, and it's something that you can share with your family and friends. And more importantly, it's going to be information that you can actually use and put it into practice today. So this is an evening show. We don't really do evening shows, but I love it. I love being able to be flexible. So we're going to jump in very soon and very shortly. So before we get started, as I always do, y'all, I want to make sure you kind of have an understanding and the intent behind Art of Living show, where it came from, what's the idea, and how we even got here. So again, we're here 6 p.m. on December 6th. I just celebrated my birth anniversary a couple of days ago. So, I'm feeling all the Sagittarius and December energy, as you all should be feeling our energy as well. So Art of Living show actually was a spinoff or in combination with a book that I wrote. So this is the book that I wrote. Highly suggest you all get a copy of this. This is the first edition. There will be more editions of this. So the Art of Living is universal principles that I believe are what we need to be able to live a healthy life, but more importantly, go from existing to living. A lot of time and oftentimes in Black and Brown communities, and really all over the world right now, we are one paycheck away from being homeless, as they say, or one paycheck away from losing everything. And that thinking and that mentality is because we're often in a survival mentality. We're often in a survival mode of hustle and bustle and trying to make ends meet. And so I learned, many years, or just had the concept, and it finally has come to fruition over the last couple of years, of this concept and this idea around moving from just survival to thriving, and just existing to living, right? And so I believe that there's some universal principles, no matter what religion, no matter what way of life you ascribe to, that you can apply these and add these to your life today. And so the universal principles that I stand by are knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. And in this book, I break down what I mean by knowledge, what I mean by wisdom, and what I mean by understanding. Most of the influence comes from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, taught to us by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So I didn't make this stuff up on my own. This comes from my own study. And again, just kind of my way of putting these words and putting these universal principles into practice. So I'm not going to keep telling you about the book, because you should go buy it yourself. So you can get it on travelingpillar.com. Again, it's written by me. Of course, I sign every book, and I can get this in the mail to you as soon as possible. But I just want to read the back of it real quick before we jump into today's show. So I said, life is short. The least I can do is help and inspire people, or let my life be a testimony and inspiration for someone else. My life advice for anyone is find your purpose, live your purpose, and do good while you're here. This book addresses the mindset needed to begin to go from existing to living. The 3 principles of living: knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. When one dedicates and commits one's time and space to learn these concepts and principles, there will inevitably be a change in one person's life. Taking a small investment of time and the step to apply what you have learned will help you give greater insight and opportunities for success and shift of a mindset. All right. So the question is, are you willing to do something different? Are you ready to take charge of your life, take control of your own existence, to begin to live and thrive and not just survive? So take a leap of faith, try something new, bet on yourself. And the only moment that is real is now. So stop surviving and let's begin to live. That's just the back of the book, y'all. So feel free to jump in and purchase this book so you can begin to go from just not surviving to thriving, and not existing, but living. So with that being said, I want to also introduce to y'all, before I bring in my guest, this book right here is very powerful. the 4 agreements. There's also a 5th agreement, but we don't even going to talk about the 5th agreement until we can master the 4 agreements. But I highly suggest that you all get those 4 agreements, understand them, understand how they're a practical guide to our own personal freedom. And more importantly, this is something that you can use every single day in your life, So those are 2 books that I recommend as we jump into this topic around mental health. What I will say is that mental health has always been a concern, especially for Black and Brown communities. But more importantly, we have seen the rise in behaviors, I'll say. And we'll talk more when I bring my guest in, but I just want to lay that little bit of the foundation. We've seen a rise in behaviors. We've seen a rise in addiction. In the city of Portland, I was just having a conversation the other day with someone, and we were just like, Portland looks like nothing that we grew up, with. It is out of control here. And there's things that are taking place here. And you can say houselessness, you can say drugs, you can say addiction, but it's not a normal city right now. And it's got people moving away based on behavior and based on what's showing up. And we can blame COVID. We can say COVID exposed a lot of this, but a lot of this stuff was already in our community and it was lying dormant. So this is a healthy conversation that we want to have, but more importantly, want to shine the spotlight on something that we all talk about, maybe at home, but we don't always talk about in public, So that's where we're going to jump into and have this wonderful conversation with my dear friend, my sister, Dr. Arisah Muhammad. So I'm going to bring her in, y'all. And y'all know I've only done a handful of these YouTube shows. So if we have some technical difficulties, just, blame it on my inexperience. But we're going to jump in. There we go. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. You saying that you only did a handful. I've never did any. So here we go.
Perfect. Here we go. Absolutely. Well, it looks like everything is good. The Wi-Fi is good. So we good. We good. So we just going to jump right in. Go ahead. And if you don't mind just sharing a brief intro, just who you are, the type of work that you do, and then we'll kind of get into the conversation at hand.
Well, greetings to you all. I'm Dr. Arisah Muhammad Lewis. I've been working in the field of addiction and mental health for 25 years, a little over 25 years. Personally, I got into this field because as of December 1st, I am 28 years clean and sober, removed from heroin addiction, from crack cocaine addiction, and from alcohol addiction. And because I got blessed to get removed from that, I came out of the business world and came into this world so that I could help others like I was helped. It was a devastating path, a devastating time in my life. But now, today, it is one of the most greatest blessings that I could have ever received because of the opportunity that I get to help so many who are sick and suffering from the disease of addiction. I have my master's degree in sociology and social work, and I have my PhD in social work with addiction studies. I am a licensed practice addiction studies type person. Anything that has to do with addiction, I'm there. And I enjoy what I do. I help people and go on vacation. I love it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you would have to love it to be in it for so many years. And I'm sure the stories that you have seen and been exposed to has been or can be considered hard for some of us, right? So I think part of the work that we all get into, our passion has to be there and our drive has to be there. So I want to, if you don't mind, can we talk a little bit about I want to define. So a lot of what I want to do is kind of clear up definitions for folks. So what do we mean by mental health? What do we mean by addiction? And before we kind of go into what happens in the mind when we do experience addiction or when we do have addictions and what really takes place. from a neurological level, but also what happens in those behaviors. So can we just define when we talk about mental health, what are we talking about when we say what is mental health or defining mental health?
Mental health is broad. Mental health can is it's very broad. It can be situations. It could be endorphins in your brain. It could be the way you were raised. It just depends on who's
Mm-hmm.
defining the mental health. Is it the prison system? Is it the Department of Children and Family Services? Is it your mama or somebody next door? It just depends on, because
Mm-hmm.
as a people, we don't want to be defined as crazy, because most
Right.
often in the brown and black community, when you say you got a mental health problem, the first thing they say, we ain't crazy. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
well,
Mm-hmm.
define crazy from that
Right.
perspective.
Right.
Um, Mental health is can most often is a situation. What type of situation am I in that is causing me to think other than myself, or it's causing me
Mm.
to respond other than normally respond? What behavior goes with that?
Mm-hmm.
And you don't necessarily have to ever had drugs or alcohol. It could be in your brain
Mm-hmm.
that's not creating the balance. I tend not to talk a lot about the medical aspect because that's not my specialty. However, I do know that most often, when defined with mental health, it is usually based on some type of situation that done happened in your life, and they stream it from there. I in
Mm-hmm.
the DSM-5. The DSM-5 is a mental health book that they use to define what affects you. And so in
Mm-hmm.
California, because people live um, in the lower parts of the city, they fly over the top of their heads most of the night in what the so-called ghetto, and people develop PTSD from that. Just hearing the
Mm-hmm.
sirens and hearing the helicopter, and now that's a DSM five mental
Mm.
health
A
type
diagnose.
situation.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
It's a diagnosis, yes, and it's
Right.
created.
Right.
See, so it just
Mm.
depends on who's defining mental health. I tend not to. I work a lot with the Department of Children and Family Services, and whenever they toss the word around mental health, my first question to them is, "What do you mean? How are you defining that?
Right.
What is
Mm-hmm.
giving you the reason to be able to say that?" And 90% of the time, they don't have a anything that they can tell me that can substantiate what they're saying, because it's a
Right.
behavior, and because the behavior is different or what they would expect, it's automatically a mental health problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Addiction, on the other
Yeah.
hand, we all have an addiction to something. It's just
Right.
natural,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just which one can point at sex addiction, you can point at gambling
Mm-hmm.
addiction, you can point at drug addiction, alcohol addiction. But what about the addiction to Twinkies? Okay, gotta have it, can't let it. What about the
Right.
addiction to my tablet? If I lose my phone, I lose my mind.
Right.
We
Yep.
develop addictions. What about an addiction to a television program that you just gotta watch that program all the time, and I gotta run home, hurry up, and I don't care what's going on. Don't my
Mm.
mom? I grew up with my mom and watching the stories, and addicted to all my children. And
Mm-hmm.
my mom would
Mm-hmm.
always say, "Don't talk to me till after my stories go."
Right.
You know,
Yep.
so addictions are developed. And once you do anything repetitiously, they say Murphy's Law
Mm.
said if you do anything more than 28 days, you're addicted to it. So it's wide as well. But it's just the ones that we look at that are detrimental to society are the ones that we focus on.
So, man, so much in that. You said so much to that, because to that point, that last point about it's the ones that are detrimental to society, right? That we focus on. But like you said, we don't,
yes,
right. We don't look at Housewives of Atlanta and having to hurry up and watch that as an addiction. And so I guess let's explore that a little bit. Like, what is it about? Right. What is it about? What happens from a neurological standpoint, from the brain standpoint, that creates an addiction or causes it to be so difficult for us to break the addiction? Like, what is it? What's happening in the brain?
It's a misfiring.
I don't know.
Of the
Did
neurons.
You hear me? Okay.
It's a misfiring, and because repetition, yes, and because repetition is the mother of skill, anything that I do over and over and over again is going to program my brain. And once it programs my brain, then it programs my mind, because my mind and my brain are two different things. So if I keep doing it over and over and over, now it's a misfiring. To be normal to my brain is not normal to my brain now. Why? Because my mind is telling me I got to have this. I got to do this. This is the way it has to be done. It's kind of like, like people who they say so-called from OCD. Like, I'm OCD to the 15th power. I need everything to be neat, but only in certain areas. Like I might want my toothbrush on the left side instead of the right side. Toothpaste. So it's the that are important to me. It's the things that are important to me. So as I continue to do it, I develop the habit of I get addicted to it. Why? Because who I am defines where I go, how I live, how I need to operate. What parameters does that look like for me? And then I go out into the world, and the world is not doing that. So now they're looking at me saying I have an addiction. Okay, so like today, marijuana is legal now. Okay? People can smoke marijuana basically whenever they want to. You think they haven't developed an addiction? Yes, they've developed an addiction. But there's no addiction. No one's looking at that. And addictions are generally things that stop you from doing your normal living. So if I can't live without a joint, if I can't live without watching, if I miss the Atlanta lives, and I get upset, I get sick, my head starts to hurt, whatever it is, until I fix that. Know? And all of that goes with mental health. All of that goes with mental health, because it disrupts the way I think. My mental capacity about myself, what I think about myself, how do others see me? I concoct this thing in my mind about how I should do and what I should look like and how I should act, and it starts messing with me. And again, the neurons are misfiring. Most people with a situation, it's only why they're using drugs that their mental health is affected. But then you have people who literally do not have the creative balance in their minds that were born. It's not firing right. It's just your neurons firing right. Mental health. But what
Mm-hmm.
does that look like? And whatever we focus on, that's what the problem becomes.
Mm. Mm. Okay. So one of the things, and you and I have talked about this several times around kind of the stigma around mental health or the lack of talking about it in the Black and
mental
Brown
health.
community, right? And it creates um, such a shadow or such a environment where we don't talk about it in the community, we don't talk about it in the family, and then then you have someone like you said earlier who doesn't want to associate with being crazy for for lack of better words. But what do you how do you, I guess, have those conversations with anybody, but particularly Black and Brown clients or people around the topic to get them more comfortable with just acknowledging what mental health is or acknowledging the things that are happening in our community that can be detrimental, but also more importantly beginning to have these conversations to where it doesn't feel like they're taboo in our community, right? So when you have clients, or just kind of share just some of your experience of how do you make people comfortable having these type of conversations? Does that make sense, that question?
Yes. Well, mental health is a state of well-being. And most
Mm-hmm.
often, a person has to realize his or her own abilities, how they cope,
Mm-hmm.
what makes them
Mm-hmm.
stress. How are they at work? Are they productive at work? Are they able to contribute to the community? How do they see themselves being a part of? And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, coping skills are passed down from generation to generation. This is the way my mama did it. This is the way my grandmother did it. This is the way, and so this is the way I do it.
Right.
No explanation
Mm-hmm.
about why it's being done like that. It's just been passed down from generation to generation.
Mm-hmm.
So, keeping my mind well, I have to exercise my mind, good nutrition. How
Mm-hmm.
do I think? Am I always in the argumentative person? Am I always arguing? Do I self?
Mm-hmm.
How do I cope with death? How do I cope with poverty? I don't have enough
Mm-hmm.
money in the house to feed my children. Mentally,
Right.
that's tearing me down. It's making me stressed.
Yep.
So I go get a
Yep.
drink or a joint or whatever, or sex or whatever I have to make me feel better. And I feel better for a moment, but the stress in my mind is still there.
Yep.
You hear people say, I'm about to lose my mind. Why? Because they don't have any control
Mm-hmm.
over what's going on in their mind, because they have no control over the situations that are happening in their
Right.
mind.
Mm.
you know um so
Mm.
finding a way to cope with the normal stresses of life will help you to work more productively. So when I talk with my clients, especially African, talk with them, and I'm starting to see more of them come into my office now, because a lot of it had to do with COVID, when they had to live with each other, the wife, the girlfriend, the children not going to
Yep.
school. The stresses of that took a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
over the top. And so when
Mm.
I talk to them, I ask them is, how's home? What
Mm-hmm.
does your home look like? And I'll hear, well, I lost my job. I can't pay my bills. The wife is on my head. The children are acting out. We're always doing those types of things. And so
Mm-hmm.
right away, that tells me that their well-being is not good.
Mm. Right.
So
Right.
what I found that worked, most of that is getting them to what we call woosah, getting them to breathe, doing
Mm-hmm.
breathing exercises. Just breathe, because the violence at an all-time high in the whole
Right.
United States. It went up. It shot to the top when it came, because there was no other way to peace.
Mm-hmm.
People really couldn't get to their drug dealer. but they
Right.
couldn't get to the liquor store unless, so it
Yep.
created a problem all across America. It's unfortunate, but
Yep.
it's somewhat an actual fact.
Mm-hmm.
So when I address it with people, I get them to talk about situations. I get them to talk to me. I make us listening than I do talking because that's important.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to listen when you're listening to hear what is being said in between the words. And you can't do that talking. You have to be able to listen.
Right.
That's how I get started, by just talking. Just talk to me about it. What?
Mm-hmm.
The dog
Uh-oh. Did I
walking.
lose you?
And how do you see that? I'm not one of those people who go into. I'm not one of those people who go into. I'm not one of those people who go into. I'm not one of those people who go into. I'm not one of those people who go into. And so that's how it lasts for them.
Hold on. We got some delay. Something's happening. Uh-oh. Hold on, y'all. I hope y'all catching this. I know the video is choppy, but the audio was good up until this point. I don't know what happened. Hold on, y'all. Let's see. Can you hear me now? They don't want this good information to get out. I don't know if you can hear me or not. It's a still photo. Well, we're going to sit here because we're going to see what happens if she can come back in. But that, when we talk about mental health, y'all, this is huge. And I wrote down about the wellness, your well-being is mental health. And I think that's one of the, changing of how we look at mental health is looking at it as a holistic approach, as opposed to, oh, well, that's so-and-so and they need some medication. Like, no, like we need to really look at mental health from a holistic standpoint, mental, spiritual, physical, all different types of ways that contribute to our well-being and our mental health. So, man, this was really good. I was about to start asking some more questions. But the Wi-Fi, they just got us trapped up today. It's one of them days where the Wi-Fi works up until right now. Right. So let me see. Let me bring my sister back in, see if it's working. People making comments. The headphones. We'll see if it's I don't know. I'm the only one with headphones, but I think I don't know. We're going to try one more time. All right. You there, Sister Arisha? No. Why they keep playing with us today? Let me see. All right, Sister Risha, if you can hear me, I would say try to log out and then log back in and see if that changes, if you're willing to. If not, we can revisit if necessary. But something's happening. It's just a froze picture when I bring you in to the stream, so I'm not sure what's happening. Um, but yeah, you are still frozen on my end. But as we keep going, and hopefully she can log out and then log back in. But I just want to encourage you all to again look at, one of the things that I think is important that she said was doing kind of our own self-assessment and looking at um, what do we do consistently, where are our own personal patterns, and what do we do and why do we do what we do, right? And being able to assess our own thinking, our own actions. I had a conversation with myself the other day about when you go to sleep at night, or before you go to sleep at night, doing a self-assessment and a scanning of your day, right? And figuring out, just assessing yourself. When I had that conversation yesterday, did I, when I had that conversation, earlier today, did I say everything that I needed to say today? Did I speak my truth regardless of circumstances? Was I kind to every person that I met? Did I, was there anything that I wish I would have done differently? Literally almost every night, these are the type of thoughts that I have, before I lay down at night, before I go to rest. I think about, there she is, she's back. And look, the movements actually match. Y'all can't see it because it's in the back studio, but look, she moving at the same. Okay, let me bring her in. There she go. I don't know what happened. There it is. Okay.
I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't. So until you text me, I was like looking at myself not moving. I said, "Okay, this is
Yes.
stressful."
I kept bringing you in and out, and I said she's not moving. So let me.
That's not mental health.
Right. Right. Well, I was sharing about how and we're gonna keep it going. The beauty about this is that the audio is good. So the audio is great. And so I can upload this to a podcast.
Great.
But the video is gonna be what it is. But the audio is good. I was just sharing.
Well, I
that.
was saying, I don't know what part we got out of talking about the mental health, but I wanted to just make a stress that it affects how we think, how we feel, how we act. Mental health also determines how we relate to other people, how we interact with other people, the choices we make. So it's very important that you can have it, and most of that comes from how you eat, how you rest, exercising, the company you keep, people you're around, music that you listen to, all those types of different things, because mental health is so important because it goes from every stage of your life. Like when you're a child, your mental health, when you're adolescent, your mental health is different, and when you're an adult, it's different. So getting in practice of taking care of yourself will help your mind to be more at ease, and how you handle situations that used to baffle you will change the way. One of my favorite sayings is from Dr. Wayne Dyer. He said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Makes a lot of sense. How do we look at things? How do we look at our situation? How do we look at lives? Very, very important when we do those types of things. So I just wanted to share with you just a few mental health mental disorders, if you will. So
Yes.
one that's more common is mood disorder, such as depression and bipolar. You'll hear people
Mm-hmm.
say, "Oh, you just bipolar." Well, what does that mean? Well, what that means
Right.
is I have high highs. Sometimes I'm way up here and I'm on top of the sky and everything is going okay. And then 5 minutes later, I want to cut the world. I want to cuss everybody out. I'm done. You know, uh, uh, up and down. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's for
Mm-hmm.
just a normal person. Now imagine a person who's using drugs. Say they're using heroin, and they're smoking crack. One's an upper,
Mm.
one's a downer. So it makes them have that up and down effect.
Right.
Bipolar syndrome is one of the ones that you will hear most clinicians say when they talk about mood disorders and mental health,
Mm.
and depression. Depression can be both your brain is not firing. And I use the word firing because the simple
Mm-hmm.
fact it's like little things that do the firing, and one talks to the other, and to make your brain do what it's supposed to do. But then there's
Mm-hmm.
situational depression. Situational
Yes.
depression is
Yes.
much different than the mental health of mind. Situation depression can come from I got fired from my job today and now I'm depressed. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
feeling. Depression means I'm feeling low. I'm feeling low of myself. So
Mm-hmm.
situation depression can be anything. Somebody hit
Mm-hmm.
my car, somebody, I broke up out of my relationship, or whatever the case may be. And some people stay in depression a long time because they don't have coping skills. They don't know how to bring themselves out of that. And
Right.
again, not going, you don't always have to go to a therapist, but you should always have somebody you can run things by, somebody that you
Right.
can talk to that's non-judgmental. Every person should
Mm-hmm.
have one person like that in their lives, that they can just tell everything to, and that person will be there for you. And they don't so much give you advice as they do listen
Mm-hmm.
and guide you. We're so quick to want to give advice,
Right.
but a lot of times we just need to, a person when they come to talk to you, they don't really want to hear advice you have for them. They just want to talk.
That's it.
And a lot of times we can't we always think we got to add something to that.
Right.
The other one is anxiety disorder. You
Mm-hmm.
hear a lot about anxiety disorder now. People are talking about, my anxiety is high. So what is anxiety disorder? Anxiety is
Mm-hmm.
like, my mind is racing, it's going all over the place, and I get this paranoia about, is everybody talking about me or looking at me, or and the feels like the walls is closing in, and I get
Mm.
suffocated, and can't breathe, and those types of things. Excuse me. Those can both happen mentally, but they can also happen situationally. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
I love to shop, but I don't like going to the mall
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because it's too many people in the mall.
Right.
When I go to the mall, I get anxiety because it's just too many
Mm-hmm.
people because I can't watch everybody. I feel like I need to watch everybody, and I can't. So I can't stay in the mall. I shop online. I'm so glad that they admitted shopping online.
Right.
I had a friend of mine said,
Yes.
"Well, before they got online shopping, what did you used to do? A note with somebody to go get money." I just never liked
Mm-hmm.
going to the mall.
Right.
And then you have personality disorder, where people talk about they have different personalities. Well, normal people, we have a couple of personalities. You got a personality that you grew up with when you were younger. You developed one when you became a teenager. Because how many of you pretended to be somebody that you weren't?
Mm.
Ah,
Come on.
I'm gonna be
Come on.
Sally today. I'm Sally today and Queen Nefertiti tomorrow. you know, and I start taking these personalities on as if they are generally me, and I started living in that. And that can be a good thing and a bad thing. What did I do when I best queens? And a young lady some months ago, she said, every time I come to your office, you always say, greetings, queen, or I'll tell them grand rising. It depends on what time of the day it is. She said, but you always called me a queen. She said, and I never thought of myself like that until you started calling me that. And she said, one day in the mirror said, oh, I am a queen, and it changed her whole because it was repetitious for me. I kept putting that in her. You are a queen. Same way with black men. When I see black men coming out of the store or walking, I'd be like, "Hey, King, how you doing today?" They give me that look like, "Huh? Yeah. How you doing, God? You all right today?" And they be looking at me like, "Huh?" But it's just changing the way we look at ourselves. Then a lot of times eating disorders are developed. And eating disorders most oftentimes come out of depression. Either I'm eating too much or I'm not eating enough. More common today is traumatic stress disorder. Everybody in the world got PTSD.
Yes.
And that's more prevalent. They got a whole book on that. And then last but not least, then we have substance abuse disorder. And I tell people all the time that you might not use heroin or you might not use crack or cocaine or smoke weed, but how many Tylenols do you have to take to make your headache go away? I need to take 4. Well, it said take 2. Why are you taking 4? Or people will get medication at the doc and it will say, take 2 pills as needed every 6 hours.
Right.
And most of us here take 2 pills every 6 hours. So here's the as needed part.
Right.
And because we cannot differentiate pain, we take the medication. And then we get addicted to it because we can't tell the difference between pain and ache. And most often you'll find that people get addicted to they went to the dentist and had a root canal of that sort, because of the way that they put the bottle, take 2 pills as needed, pain, 6 hours. Either I'm going to take it every 6 hours or I'm going to take it as needed. But you can't put the 2 together because I can't differentiate if I'm in pain or if I'm aching. So that's just a few of the more common mental health disorders that generally people are being treated for.
I want to ask about depression.
Too much.
No, that was beautiful. Because I want to ask about depression. And I like how you broke down the difference between clinical, like something being clinically diagnosed, and then situational. I heard once that, and I actually posted it.
Yes.
I posted it one time and somebody got mad at me, but I posted it and said, ingratitude or depression is the cause of ingratitude or is the result of ingratitude. Something about that, right? And I can only speak for myself that when I began to become more grateful and having more gratitude, that's what got me out of a state of depression, right? So that resonated with me. But when I posted it, someone who actually battles with depression, and I guess who takes medication, was offended by that statement that depression is linked to ingratitude. So I wanted to just toss that out to you as a doctor. just breaking down
Well,
situational depression.
that's because
Yep, go ahead.
that's because depression that has a specific.
Say that one more time. You broke up. One more time.
Depression, I said depression is not a condition that has one specific cause. It can happen for many different reasons, and it has many triggers. So whatever triggers a person can cause them depression. Depression doesn't work quickly or suddenly. Depression, it takes time. That's clinical depression versus situational depression. I know the situation I'm in and I became depressed. So people who suffer from something in their life that is causing that to happen doesn't mean they're not grateful for their life. It just means that they got something going on. You know, it could be from family history. It could be a history of depression in the family. And it's not a specific on it, because I can be happy and depressed at the same time.
Right. Right. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. And then so in terms of clinical depression or clinical diagnoses, I would assume that those require medication. I'm just assuming. But what are some of the natural kind of remedies that you recommend for any of these kind of conditions that people experience on a daily basis, or, or throughout their life?
Warm baths and tea. Warm baths always helps the whole body relax. It's a nice, warm, hot salt bath to help break down the negative energy. And tea, a peppermint tea, a green tea, warm, something warm. It should be something warm to help you to relax, to help the muscles to relax, to help your brain to relax. You know, the sensation you get when you feel warm.
They really do not want this to be recorded. Oh, it froze you up again. Y'all, why do they want to block this one? This is the show that provides healing, and they don't want us to be great today. Man. We just going to have to do a part 2. That's what's going to have to happen in a different scenario, because man. I appreciate my sister, my friend who's joining, who's been hanging on, even though it keeps kicking us out. I appreciate you for responding in the chat and just, staying connected. I'm not sure what to do, y'all, because I don't know what's happening with the Wi-Fi and her connection or my connection. I don't even know what the problem is, y'all. But what I do know is that, like I said, that conversation about depression was very interesting. And I think what I heard, Dr. Arisha say was this reality of that people's triggers can set people off either, in different ways, depression, different ways. And so what works for me, is not necessarily going to work for another person. So like I said, for me, I had to become more grateful. I had to become, it wasn't that I was ungrateful, but I had to just be thankful for what is as opposed to what isn't. And I've always been a person that's the glass is half full, but my own personal life experiences have caused me to feel invalidated, have caused me, for many, many years to think that, I wasn't loved and no one cared about me and so forth. And so for me, it was this, well, if nobody cares about me, then why do I care about them? Right. And so I spent a lot of time and a lot of energy, walking around in this world, fighting this world because I felt personally invalidated. Right. But again, as I became aware and more grateful and more appreciative of who I am and whose I am, then that shifted my own mental, or my mentality to go from depression to really more just joyful and being at peace with what is. But again, that's what worked for me. And what I heard, Dr. Arisha say is that same remedy doesn't always, it's not a blanket remedy that goes for everybody else. What are my triggers may not be the same as somebody else's triggers. What causes me to get depressed may be totally different than the next person. And so it's important for us to have that broader awareness around the mental health as a whole, but also what works for us or who we are, and making sure that we don't just put that blanketed statement over someone else's life. Right now, I think a warm bath and tea works for everybody, but aside from that, we all have our own ability to or not our own ability, we have our own self ways and self healing that we have to do because we are different as human beings. So we're gonna bring my sister back in one last time. This is the last time we're gonna try this, y'all. All right. Okay, she's back. She moving and the voice is matching.
I feel like
Girl, they do not want us to be great today.
I feel like I got some bootleg cable going on in here. So somebody's stealing my cable.
Right. I said, but I couldn't figure out if it was me or you. Yeah.
I don't know if it's me or you either, but yes, what you were saying is what might work for one person might not work for the other person. This is true. However, taking deep breaths, conscious breathing, meditating, whatever that looks like. Meditating doesn't mean that, if you can set with your mind quiet for 5 minutes, you've meditated. If you can set with your mind quiet for 3 minutes, and when I say mind quiet, means you don't think about nothing. You don't hear nothing. Right. You go from 3 minutes to 5 minutes to 15 minutes to a half day. People do it. Stretching always works. Stretching is a good way to help with your mental health. And again, engaging with other people, alike minds, people who have alike minds, people who you can discuss stuff with that they don't look at you sideways like, why are you talking about that? And listening to music. And be mindful when you're listening to music that the music is soothing, because if the music has a lot of sentence enhancers in it, then it's going to have your mind and your behavior act a certain way without your permission.
Wait a minute. Wait. I gotta write that down.
So you will be.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That is such a sophisticated way to say that.
I always say that customer sentence enhancers. I've ran out of things to say, so I just enhance it with with another word. Then taking a moment like we just did, laughing. Laughing is good. Laughing.
Yes.
We don't laugh enough, you know.
Yep.
And then when you're setting goals for your life, for your children, for anybody, make them realistic. Make it something that you
Mm-hmm.
realistically can achieve, because that will cut the stress level. That's level. Trying to be there tomorrow, that's happen. To be a millionaire, yes, but to get to that
Mm-hmm.
realistically. Own business. What is that going to look like in 3 days, or 4 days, or 4 years, or four? Just make realistic goals. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Mental health, understand. Mental health is spooky. We all
Mm. Why do they want to play with us? See if you could turn off your video and see if it helps the audio. Because this is dang. Mm. Nope. I apologize, y'all. We've been having technical difficulties throughout the night. She was getting ready to give us some solutions, but they froze up on us. So this is what we're gonna do, y'all. Um, we're gonna find another way, because this, I'm telling you, this conversation is so valuable. And one of the things I wanted to jump into was just to pick her brain around what is it about COVID that has exasperated so much of this mental health and violence and all of these behaviors that we see in our community. I want to hear her assessment of what she feels has happened. And she shared earlier, that violence is on an all-time high, not just in certain cities and states, but in America. Um, and so I would love to know from her perspective what she feels is the reason that COVID brought this out, and then obviously to pick her brain and see if it's ever going to go away. So that's what we want to talk about. Yeah, I'm gonna see. We can maybe check on Instagram Live. Because they just do not want us to be great over here on YouTube. But the beauty is I'll be able to get the audio and be able to push the audio out on my podcast. But, in the meantime, I appreciate y'all tapping in. We hit the hour mark almost. I'm going to check in with my sister and figure it out. But more importantly, y'all, go back and listen to the beginning of it. Again, the audio was good. The video just was choppy. Very important for us to understand the differences between situational and clinical diagnoses, and more importantly, understand how we have to assess our own self, assess our mind, assess our mental, find out, what our patterns are. What do we do every single day? What do we give attention to? Because that begins to set patterns and set our mind to do things on a consistent basis. And if they're not positive, then naturally you understand why you may feel depressed almost every damn day, because what you have your attention on is not something that's going to be positive or reap positive benefits. But if we're not assessing ourselves, if we're not taking time to look at our own life and our own thinking, then we will think our mental health and who we are disconnected, and they're really one and the same. So we have to be able to assess ourselves and scan our own mental to make sure that we understand our own patterns and our own behaviors. So with that being said, I'm gonna call my sister on the phone and we just gonna figure out how to make a plan B on this wonderful interview on mental health, because this is key, this is serious, and this is something that we need to have on a regular basis in conversation. So due to technical difficulties, we're going to log off today, but there is enough in here that we can extract. And so tap in on another day when we go live. So thank you all for tapping in, and we will chat soon. Peace.